Witness what it's like to be a non-binary pregnant person and then a parent. Hello and welcome back to I'm the Xaddy. Firstly, thank you for sticking with me whilst I took a little break. Am I refreshed? Not really. Did I sleep a bit better? A little. But the last couple of weeks have brought a lot more than just rest. We ended up back in hospital because the baby's movements had slowed down. But thankfully everything was absolutely fine. But whilst I was there, they tested my urine. Always. But they found glucose, so the following day I was sent for a glucose tolerance test. Then the day after that I found out I got gestational diabetes. Then, the day after that, I was sitting with the diabetes team learning how to prick my finger and test my blood sugar 4 times a day. It's amazing how quickly pregnancy can change direction. One minute you're planning the final few weeks before meeting your baby, and the next you're learning about carbohydrates and blood sugar and food pairings and wondering whether the birth you've imagined is still going to happen. At the moment, we still don't know whether I need medication or whether I can manage it through diet alone. But regardless, it changes things. And honestly, it's really knocked me. And I think what surprised me most was that it wasn't fear about managing the diabetes. It was the grief for the birth I might not have. But because we'd literally visited the birth centre we'd hoped to have our baby in, we'd walked around the rooms, we'd imagined and bringing them into the world there. I had started picturing it, and suddenly I had to start picturing something else, and that was hard. I think I've spent the last few days grieving a birth that hasn't even happened yet, and that's a strange feeling, because whilst I've been processing all of that, I've realised something else. Today's episode isn't really about gestational diabetes. It's about this strange stage of life that nobody really talks about. Pregnancy isn't just waiting for a baby. It's becoming someone else before you actually arrived there. You're not who you were, but you're not yet the parent you're becoming. You're somewhere in between. And that's what I want to talk about today. The first time I realised I didn't quite feel like myself wasn't during a scan or a hospital appointment. It was washing tiny baby clothes, folding sleep suits that looked impossibly small, and rolling up their tiny pairs of socks, and filling the trolley we put together ready for their arrival. I remember looking at everything and thinking, this is actually happening. And I think that was the first moment I realised that it wasn't just about a baby arriving. It was about me changing too. And at the same time, I couldn't quite work out where I fitted into all of that. It's strange. In some ways, I feel more like myself than I ever have. And carrying this baby feels incredibly natural to me. It feels right, like it's something I was always supposed to do. But at the same time, I also feel less like myself. My body's changing every single day, and I can't keep up. Simple things are becoming difficult. I move differently, I sleep differently, I exist differently. And somehow all of this can be true at once. People ask me all the time, so how are you feeling? Now, during the heat wave, my standard stock response has just been hot. Because honestly, that sums up quite a lot of it. But if someone genuinely wanted the truthful answer, it'd probably sound something like this. I'm exhausted. I'm sick of Gaviscon. I'm somehow starving and yet completely full at the same time. I've developed hemorrhoids, which is not on my pregnancy bingo card. And my hands are so swollen and go numb within 10 minutes of playing any video game. Or using the computer. And I'm constantly watching the sides of my feet. I feel conscious of the way I look and the fact that I do not want to put proper clothes on, so I'm living in a vest and shorts to keep myself cool. And at the same time, I have lost all care for what others think about what I'm wearing and if I've got a boob half hanging out. But that's a lot to unload onto the poor woman at the checkout in Asda who's only trying to be polite. So I smile and say, yeah, I'm good, thanks. But what people don't realise is what you are actually asking a pregnant person when you say, "How are you?" or "How are you feeling?" is that one question is about 20 different answers. And me personally, I don't always have the mental space to answer all of those questions in one go. When people talk about nesting, they usually talk about it from a practical point of view. Getting the nursery ready, buying the car seat, packing the hospital bag, washing all their tiny clothes, and putting the car together. And don't get me wrong, all of that matters. Those things need doing. But I don't think that's what nesting actually is. Or at least, I don't think that's what I think it is. Because whilst all those practical things have been happening, there's also been something else happening inside my head. I've been quietly becoming a parent, not by changing nappies and not by feeding the baby, and not because they've not arrived yet, but because my brain has slowly started making room for another human being. And I don't think I'd really appreciated that until recently. My wife has honestly been incredible through all of this. She has done so much whilst also constantly reminding me to sit down, drink some water, have a nap, and stop trying to carry things that I should definitely not be carrying. She's packed our hospital bags. She's washed every single thing we've been given for the baby. She's organised the practical bits that my brain either forgot about or simply didn't have the energy for. I'm incredibly grateful for her. And I actually spoke to her about this episode. I asked her what this strange in between stage feels like for her, and she explained it better than I ever could. She said, "It's like the build up to Christmas." And honestly, I thought that was perfect. She said, "Christmas isn't just one day, it's weeks of anticipation and buying presents and wrapping them, planning the food and sorting all the logistics, looking forward to seeing people, and looking forward to giving gifts. But there's also something bittersweet about it because once Christmas Day arrives, the build up is over. You'll never have this anticipation again. And that's how she feels about waiting for our baby. She's excited, she's impatient, she can't wait to meet them. But she's also aware that this is the last chapter where it's just us. And I think that's something people don't talk about enough. She said something else that really stuck with me. She said, her favourite time of year is actually that strange period between Christmas and New Year, where everything goes quiet. The pressure disappears, the wrapping paper's gone, the planning's over. There's nowhere you have to be, you just exist. And she said that she imagines that those first few weeks with our baby will feel a little bit like that. Quiet and gentle, just us, getting to know each other. And I absolutely loved that, because I'd never thought about it like that before. The part that fascinates me the most about this stage isn't actually the practical side, it's the mental side, because physically everyone can see what's changing. The bump gets bigger, the baby moves, people comment on how pregnant you look or how big or small you are. Your body tells everyone what's happening, but mentally, it's invisible. No one really talks about what happens inside your head, because this isn't really about my body anymore, it's about my identity. It's about becoming a parent before you actually feel like one. And those aren't the same things. I don't feel like I've lost myself so far anyway. And I've heard people say that a lot. Oh, you lose yourself when the baby comes, you're not you, you're a different person. But I don't think that's what this is. I think I've changed, and change isn't loss. They're not the same. I've worked really hard throughout this pregnancy to stay connected to the parts of me that make me me. Some of those things have stayed exactly the same, and some of them haven't. I've kept writing, I've kept doing jigsaws, I've kept playing video games, although admittedly not as much because of my swollen hands, but I've watched far too much Bargain Hunt, and I've tried to keep hold of the little things that make me feel like me. But gardening is probably the biggest one that's changed. And if you know me personally, you'll know I absolutely love gardening. I love being outside and I love growing things. There's something really calming about it. It's one of the places my brain gets to switch off. Before my pregnancy, my wife built me a little potting station, and it comes in handy for me still now, and I can still potter about and do things without bending over. But now we've kind of reached that point of the year where everything needs putting in the ground. Seeds need sowing, things need lifting. You spend half your time kneeling and the other half trying to get back up. And honestly, I'm just not capable of that right now. I still wander around the garden, I still water things, and I still have a little potter. But mainly to make sure that everything stays alive in this ridiculous weather. But it's different, and I miss it. I miss growing that weird veg that my wife gets sick of because I planted far too many. But then I catch myself thinking one day there'll be a tiny person wandering around after me, probably pulling carrots out of the ground before they're ready and picking tomatoes that aren't ripe, watering absolutely everything except the plants, and suddenly the thing I'm grieving becomes something I'm looking forward to instead. It won't come back exactly as it was, it'll come back different. And actually, I think that'll probably be better. Different doesn't always automatically mean worse. The harder thing for me hasn't actually been the lack of gardening. It's been learning that independence can look different. I've always been fiercely independent, almost stubbornly so. I'm the type of person that would rather spend 20 minutes learning how to do something than ask someone else to help. And pregnancy has been quietly challenging that every single day. One of the biggest examples is driving. I love driving. I'm nearly always the one that drives. And not because my partner doesn't want to, just because I offer. It's automatic. We leave the house, I reach for the keys, that's just what happens. Except it isn't anymore. My hands have become so swollen that changing gear hurts. Pulling the handbrake is awkward, and even gripping the steering wheel is difficult at points. So now, before we even reach for the keys, my wife already has them generally. Sometimes she asks, but now most of the time it's a given that she's driving, not me. She just says, I'll drive. And it's such a tiny moment, it probably lasts like 2 seconds. But emotionally, it lasts much longer because every time it happens, I'm reminded that I can't quite do what I used to do. And I know it's temporary. And in a way, I hate admitting that. But not because my wife isn't wonderful, she is, but because accepting help has never come naturally to me. Pregnancy has taught me that it's something I clearly need to learn. And sometimes letting somebody help you is actually letting them love you. And that's a lesson I'm still practicing. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about becoming a parent is that people tell you that you're going to lose yourself. And I've heard it loads. Obviously, I mentioned it earlier about people telling me that you'll never be the same, everything changes. And yes, everything will change. But change and loss aren't the same things. I chose this. We chose this. We spent years trying to get here. That doesn't mean every part of it is easy. And it doesn't mean there aren't things that I will miss. I think it's perfectly healthy to grieve the life you're leaving behind, even when it's a life you've chosen to leave. And those two things can exist together. You can be incredibly excited and deeply sentimental for what you're moving on from. You can feel grateful and overwhelmed. You can desperately want your baby to arrive whilst quietly saying goodbye to the version of your life you've known until now. And none of those feelings cancel each other out. They are all true and all at the same time. The core parts of me haven't changed. My values haven't changed. The way I want to treat people hasn't changed. The things I care about haven't changed. Those are the things I'm taking into parenthood with me. I'm just waiting to discover what they look like when somebody starts calling me Xaddy. I think I'm not scared of changing. I'm scared of disappearing. And those are two very different things. The strange thing is, I still don't feel like a parent, and I'm 35 weeks pregnant. We've done all the jobs, washed everything, and packed everything, and built everything. we've got names and we've imagined meeting them. And somehow I still don't feel like somebody's parent, which got me thinking, what does feeling like a parent actually mean? Is it the positive pregnancy test? Is it hearing their heartbeat for the first time? Is it feeling them kick? Or is it the labour? Or is it birth itself? Or is it that first night that you're left alone together and you suddenly realise, oh, they are actually trusting us with this tiny human? And I genuinely don't know. And maybe that's because becoming a parent doesn't happen all at once. Here's my theory. I think it happens in stages. I think the first stage is preparation, not just buying baby girls or preparing your life, preparing your relationship, preparing your home, preparing yourself. It's all the invisible work no one really sees. The conversations, the planning, the worrying, the imagining, the birth preferences, the hospital bags. It's making space, not just in your house, but in your life. And stage 2 is birth, for obvious reasons. It's the moment everything changes. Not because suddenly you're an expert, but because there's no going backwards. Whatever happens, you crossed into a completely different chapter. And stage 3, I think, is that moment where everybody leaves. The midwives go, the room goes quiet, and it's just you and your partner and this tiny person who you don't know yet. And I imagine that we will look at each other and go, so what now? And I think that probably will be the first moment we both quietly realise we are somebody's parents. And I don't think anyone can prepare you for that silence. Stage 4, learning. Because no amount of books or podcasts or classes or hypnobirthing audiobooks can actually teach you your baby. You can prepare all you like, but until they're here, it's all theory. Then suddenly it's practical. You start learning each other, their cries, their little noises, their habits, their personality, who they are, and who you are around them. Stage 5, I think, never ends. It's growing. It's adapting and changing and making mistakes and learning all over again. Watching them grow whilst quietly realising you're growing too. And I don't think becoming a parent is a destination. I think it's always something that you're becoming. It's always something that's developing and changing. Feeling the baby move definitely makes everything more real. Sometimes they stretch, sometimes they shove what I think is probably their bum right out underneath my ribs. And sometimes I decide my bladder is the perfect place to lean. And every single time I'm reminded that they're there. But strangely, it still doesn't make me feel more like a parent. If anything, it sometimes makes me feel more like a vessel. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean right now, my biggest job is keeping somebody else alive. And I know that isn't the whole truth because I'm already their parent. But emotionally, sometimes that's what it feels like. Appointments are about them, measurements are about them. People ask how they're doing. Even when people ask how I'm doing, they're often really asking about the baby. And that's totally understandable because they're the exciting bit. But every now and again, I realise I've become the environment that they live in. And that's a really strange feeling. Because I spent my whole life just being me. I'm also somebody's home. That's a really kind of weird and beautiful thing, but it's also a huge identity shift. And sometimes I'll finally get comfortable on the sofa, forget about the bump for a few minutes, start watching something, and then suddenly they kick or stretch or roll over, and I'm instantly brought back into the present. Like they're quietly saying, I'm still here. It's amazing. It's surreal, and somehow it still doesn't quite make me feel like a parent yet. Not yet, anyway. One of the strangest things about my pregnancy is that there is simultaneously a roadmap and absolutely no roadmap at all. There are milestones, appointments, scans, leaflets, and books, as well as endless people willing to tell you what you should and shouldn't expect. And in some ways, I've really appreciated that. I've appreciated the people who have gone before me, the people who have shared their experience, the people who have made me feel less alone. But my path has always been slightly different, because when you don't see yourself represented, you have to make your own path on your own map in your own way. And pregnancy has meant constantly translating, not the information itself. The information is usually relevant, but it's translating myself into the language around me. Pregnancy has traditionally been talked about through the language of women and mothers, and obviously I understand why. But when you're non-binary and pregnant, sometimes you feel like you're standing slightly outside of all of the conversations, and you can hear the information and you know it's meant for you, but your brain does an extra step. You have to remove the parts that don't fit and quietly place yourself back into the picture every single time. It's exhausting. When midwives or consultants talk about the ladies, or leaflets talk about mothers, it's not that I stop listening. It's not that I don't understand. It's just that there's a tiny moment where my brain goes, okay, this wasn't written for me in mind. And that moment happens a lot, more than people probably realise, and it's lonely. I have looked for people like me. I have looked for someone who has walked this path before me. Someone who could say, this is what it felt like, this is what helped, this is what I wished I'd known. And I have not found that person. And it really is quite lonely, because sometimes it's not that you need advice, or, I don't need something fixing. I just need somebody who understands that. Someone who makes you think, oh, I'm not the only one. And that's why I created this podcast, because I've been searching for this. And maybe somebody else has too. Maybe somebody else that's listening right now who is trying to work out where they fit in, or maybe somebody else that's becoming a parent in a way that doesn't always fit the traditional story. And maybe they need to hear you belong here too. And I think that's something I've needed to hear for myself. At 35 weeks pregnant, I'm slower. I feel more uncomfortable. I'm sleeping badly. I'm managing the gestational diabetes. I'm listening to the hypnobirthing audiobooks. I'm reading everything I can and preparing for birth. But the biggest preparation we've done hasn't been buying things or listening to things or reading things. It's been working on ourselves. My partner and I started this journey to become parents years ago. Before there was a bump, before there was a nursery, before there were any tiny little clothes. We talked about what kind of parents we wanted to be. We talked about the things we wanted to bring with us and the things we wanted to leave behind. We had counselling. We still have counselling. We've worked through things, and we're still working through things. We tried to become the best versions of ourselves that we could. Not because we wanted to be the perfect parents, because that doesn't exist, but because we wanted to give our child the best chance of growing up with parents who were willing to grow as well. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson from this strange in-between stage. You don't become ready. You become willing, and willing to learn, and willing to change, and willing to get things wrong and try again. I think when people prepare for a baby, we spend far too much time preparing for the arrival, the clothes, the room, the stuff. And those things matter, absolutely matter. But I wonder why we don't spend more time preparing ourselves for becoming parents. Because the baby's only beginning. The bigger change is who you become alongside them. And maybe that's the real in-between stage. The space between who you were and who you are becoming. The space where you don't have all the answers yet. The space where you are learning to trust yourself. The space where you are already changing, even before you even meet the person you're changing for. So that's the question I want to leave with you. Why do we spend so much time preparing for the baby arriving, and so little time preparing for the person we become when they do? If you enjoyed this episode, please share it, favourite it, and come find me on Instagram at I'm the Xaddy.pod. If you want to get in touch about anything I've talked about in this episode, you can email me at getintouch@imthexaddy.com. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you join me next time. Peace.